Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, welcome to as well. Today, we are about to deep dive into the world of recruiting. Before we get into this video, if you do not know who I am, my name is Francesca. I make vlogs, hauls, routines, everything in between. If you like any of that, you should just go ahead and hit subscribe. I am also a full-time recruiter, and so I do make some work-life content as well. So I've had a couple of you guys comment and leave me messages on Instagram and Facebook and things like that and ask me how I got started in recruiting, what's recruiting like, how's the money, this, that, and the other. And I've answered a lot of you guys directly, but over the last couple of days I've noticed that my 9-to-5 worked in life, this video here, has been getting a little bit more traction, and so I thought that I might go ahead and answer some of your questions. So as we go through this process, I will have all of the chapters down below. So if there's a question that you're specifically looking for, feel free to click on the chapters to get there. Let's get into it. So the first thing I want to talk about is how I got into recruiting, which is kind of funny. I read a quote the other day that was like, everyone comes across recruiting from happenstance, and that no one decides to be a recruiter. They're like, you don't ask kids what they want to be and they say a recruiter. And that's very much so the case. I was in the car sales world. I was selling cars. I had worked at 2 different car companies, and I came to a point, I had had a conversation with one of my finance managers. I realized that longevity-wise, selling cars was not going to work for me. Work-life balance is very, very important to me, especially with us coming out of COVID. At the time of me making this move, we were still very heavily in the middle of COVID, but I wanted to be sure that I would be able to enjoy my life. I'm in my 20s, I'm in my mid-20s, and I felt like in the car business, I was making a lot of money, but I was not able to even do things with my time because I worked all the time. So my main goal was looking for a career path that would allow me to work like an 8 to 4, 9 to 5, 8 to 5, something along those lines. Recruiting came up because I knew that that was something that a lot of people who had been in sales before had switched over to, and vice versa. A lot of people from recruiting go over to sales. People skills, things like that are really important for these. So I actually had started looking into different staffing agencies, and then I gave up. And I decided I just wanted to get like a simple, easy job in my mind to go ahead and just get me out of the car business. So I took a secretary role at a staffing agency. And I very quickly, within the 3 months of me being there, became a recruiter because my skills through being a secretary, the initiative of kind of hopping in and getting things done, all of that got me to the point of, you need to be on the floor. You need to be helping us get people in. So I got switched over to being a recruiter. I've since left that company, and I am now a full-time regional recruiter for a franchisee company. So I have a total of 16 stores that I recruit for. Everything from the cashiers, the employees, dishwashers, all the way up until management staff. I recruit for that as well. So that's a little bit about me. Let's talk about the education and the experience needed to get these jobs. I've noticed an influx of recruiting jobs requiring you to have recruiting experience. A lot of people that I know who came into the companies that they are working in started off in staffing agencies. And a lot of times, if you have no previous recruiting experience, and if you do not have a college education or one that does not relate to recruiting, this is a good way to get started. A lot of these jobs will have kind of secretarial roles, staffing specialist, staffing assistant roles to get you started. I currently have 2 degrees. I'm actually working on a associate's degree or a certificate degree in digital marketing. My bachelor's degrees are in psychology and criminal justice. So I don't have anything to do with recruiting. I don't have an HR degree. I don't have a communications degree. I don't have any of those things. And so you don't necessarily even need a college degree. I have friends that are in the recruiting field who never completed college. And I have friends who are in the recruiting field who have HR master's degrees. So it all really just depends on where you can get in. The experience in is definitely very important. And like I said, a lot of times these staffing agencies will have special jobs that you can work on that allow you to kind of grow up into the company. I keep saying the word staffing agency, and so let's talk about agencies versus in-house, because I think I'm the best person to talk about this considering I've worked in both, and I know the difference and I feel the difference. So a lot of times with agencies, it could be a staffing firm, which tends to be like a more sophisticated, higher paying job, business oriented company that hires for things like executives, hires for like leaders and business owners for them to get their main core staff. So those are options in the agency sense. There's also staffing agencies, which are kind of like your temporary agencies that may staff for everything from customer service positions to food service positions to retail to warehouse and factory. Where I live, the kind of manufacturing end of things is really big here. And so my start in the staffing agency was primarily with light industrial manufacturing, that and customer service. So that is that. With that, you have a lot of clients. So you have to keep up with your actual employees or candidates, but you also have to keep up with different companies and clients. You have to keep up with their compliances, keep up with all of that. That can be a lot. In some staffing agencies, most staffing agencies, if it's a temporary position, you are that person's employer. So it becomes more than just you hiring them. You are what we call in the car business from cradle to grave. So you get this candidate, get them started, working through the process, then you get them hired, you get them through their drug tests, you get them through their training. You're responsible to make sure that they show up to work on time. If they are injured, you go pick them up and take them to the urgent care if they can't get there. And you make sure that they get their drug tests so that you can do their workers' comp, which your company is responsible for. It's a whole thing. Like, staffing agencies is a lot of responsibility. On the other end, when you are in-house, you could either be working within one business where you only have one location to staff for, or you can do what I do, where you are still in-house, but you have multiple different locations to staff for within the same company. With that, it does pose its challenges as well. There's not as many resources in a lot of senses. A lot of times you may be one of maybe two or even just one, like in my case, in your market area who runs your job. So if there's any issues or obstacles that come up, you really have to tackle that on your own. Another big downfall with in-house is if you are not building those proper relationships with the people around you, you don't have the opportunity to kind of build relationships elsewhere. I know there were a lot of companies when I worked in a staffing agency that some of my fellow recruiters didn't have good relationships with. And so when I was able to get into that promoted spot, I was able to go ahead and take on those clients. And some of them, we got along great. And so it brought business to the company. With this, you work with the same people every day. You kind of have to work through it, learn each other, get to know each other better. And if it's more of a corporatized environment, that can even be harder because you might not have that chance to get to know the people that you're hiring for. Another thing that a lot of you guys talk to me about is you ask me about, like, is recruiting all remote? How are you doing recruiting? If it's remote, this, that, and the other. So again, let's just break it down to three things: on-site, remote, and travel. I actually am a travel recruiter. I am not a remote recruiter. I do use the phrase remote because there are times that I do work remote throughout the day or throughout the time period, but I do actually travel between all of my 16 stores. I do on-site hiring at those stores, be it for that store itself or for the region. For some of our larger positions, I do hire for, like, the city, for instance, like you would work over that city. So I go ahead and hop in and go to each store. So with travel, of course, if you are not being compensated for your travel, or if you're using your own vehicle, that could be very expensive. It's also very time consuming. Like, there's certain locations that I have that are well over an hour away, and so that alone already takes at least 2 to 3 hours away from my day, which I could be using hiring people. I definitely feel like the travel aspect is great because you're able to still touch base with all the companies, but it is something that I am not the biggest advocate of, just because you do end up falling short of not being able to be in contact with all your stores at the same time. For instance, I have 16 stores. There are 30 days in a month, and I work 5 days a week. So what is that? That's like 20 days out of the week I am able to access my employees. So literally, unless I went to every store, one day out of the month, that would be the only way that I would see them in that month. And so that sometimes can be a little bit inefficient. On the other hand, you have remote recruiting, which is really great because it opens the door for you to be able to kind of recruit for anywhere at any time, anywhere as well. So, I mean, use myself for example. If I was fully remote and I had 16 stores, I would be able to hire for all 16 stores in one day because I would not have to physically be there. I could set up appointments and be like, okay, I need 2 for this store, I need 3 for this store. Let me just set up the appointments, go through that process. That is not the case when you are on site or if you travel. So that is kind of the beauty of remote. Also for yourself, if your company does allow and they're comfortable with you, not just being in your home, you're able to travel, see your family, make allowances for, being in different locations. Also, gas, you don't have to travel back and forth as you would to work on site or as you would to work if you travel. You're really able to kind of make things your own. On the other hand, with both remote and travel, a big con or positive is that a lot of times as a recruiter, you are solely responsible for your workload and your process. And if you're a very responsible, organized person, cool. You're probably happy no one's telling you what to do. That's how I feel. But if you're not that organized, if you're not been put in a position to be that organized, it can be very overwhelming. And then the last way is like on-site recruiting. So basically you are right there and you're recruiting for that building or that location that you are working within. And the pros to that, of course, is that you really get to know everybody around you. You really get to dig into the environment. The cons, of course, are that you don't get to leave that environment. If it's not working out or you don't have good connections with the people around you, it's not going to be functional. You still do have to drive to work, but it's not like you're driving around as much. And it does also give you kind of a better relational story for the people that you're hiring. Like, hey, I work right here in this building. My office is right here. If you take on this job, you have any questions, you can come knock on my door at any time. I have that with like my phone number or like email, but I don't have that with a physical office because I just don't have one. Another big question that I get, which I am mildly uncomfortable for, is how much money you make. I make below the average United States recruiter. So I did gather some like metrics and things like this for this particular video. On average in the United States, the average recruiter makes about $60,299 a year. That is the general average across everyone that is considered a recruiter. So kind of the range is anywhere from $35,000 to $120,000. So that's how we kind of get to that middle ground of the $60,000. And this information is from Glassdoor, which is a hiring company that, they kind of take surveys and things like that. So of course we don't fully know the data, but that's the information that they have. So keeping that in mind, that's kind of the range of pay, which honestly, if you're looking to come into a new career, a lot of entry-level positions kind of start you in that 40-ish range. So once you're able to get in and get your foot wet, you're able to get in that 40 range and grow from there. Depending on what state you live in, your starting point might be like 60 or 50. But it's definitely something that you have a lot of earning power to grow in, even if it means that you have to go to other companies. With recruiting does come in the conversation of commission. I currently do not incur commission. I work a salary-based job where I incur bonuses. But previously, when I worked for the staffing agency, I had a base pay and I had commission based off of the number of hours that my employees that I had hired worked. Confusing, I know. But that's another thing to keep in mind if you're a person who's never done commission, if you're not comfortable with commission, really just considering what types of work are good for you. I'm a fan of commission. I'm not a fan of draws. So in the car business, you have commission and draw, which really means you just make money off your commission. And the little bit of money that they give you, you have to pay them back. I know some staffing agencies or recruiting firms do a draw. But at the same time, I would say if you're able to find something with a base pay with also commission, that's really the sweet spot there because your earning potential is uncapped at that point, but you're also not owing back money if you ever have like a slow month and things like that. And then my last two questions were, why would I or why would I not recommend recruiting? I would recommend recruiting because, again, it's a job that you can get into without much education. You don't have to spend thousands of dollars on going to school to go into it. If you have good people skills, if you have good time management skills, things like that, if you're very interpersonal and intrapersonal, you're able to kind of work through this job. So I would recommend it because I think that it's a good industry to be able to grow and learn in. It also gives you a lot of opportunities. I made connections through like the employment agencies, through even like right now I'm working with a few immigrant and refugee programs I've really made a lot of community connections that I would not have made in the car business. And so it's a lot of wonderful and great opportunities to network and to grow. I wouldn't recommend it because it is sometimes an emotional and social toll. For me, I don't, I really don't like talking to people, and I know that sounds wild, but like I really don't. I don't like making phone calls. I never have. And I have such a I make YouTube videos, you know? Like I have such a social presence. I consider myself to be an introverted extrovert. So I think the understanding that this job is very social. It's very, if you are not able to maintain things solely, figure it out on your own, learn it, figure it out. I mean, of course, there are a lot of companies that make handhold, but there's only so much handholding you can do in recruiting. A lot of it does rely on the recruiter to do what they're supposed to do. And no matter what type of company you work in, those metrics, baby, they gonna come after you. So it doesn't matter if you don't know what you're doing. When your workload comes back and they're like, you hired how many people? And, you know, hopefully your job has the resources or is able to provide the resources to figure it out. But a lot of these larger firms are very cutthroat. I've heard with recruitment firms that if you don't meet certain metrics by the first month that they cut you off. It's definitely can be a cutthroat industry. My other slight do not recommend the recruiting company can be catty, and it's not just recruiting because sales is the same way. Anytime you get a group of competitive adults together, it can be catty. I think that's one thing that I like about my current job is I travel. I'm the only recruiter in my market area. My other recruiter is not even in my market area, so we're more able to rely on each other as support. But staffing agencies are catty, man. It's a whole thing. It is a whole thing. But that pretty much sums up all of the questions that you guys have asked me about recruiting. If you have any other questions, please feel free to comment down below. I'll do my best to answer them. If it's something a little bit longer, I might make a short or something to just explain it. But I will do my best to answer all of your questions. If you are new here and this is your first time watching this video, I strongly do suggest that you press that subscribe button and join this community. As a current recruiter, you will get a lot of work-related content and things like that from me. So we would love to have you join the family. Otherwise, guys, I want to thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a good rest of your day.